I'm Mr. Koshy, Managing Director and CEO of ONDC. Thank you very much for being with us here on the panel, sir. Dr. Pramod Varma is the former Chief Architect of Aadhaar, who's been involved with lots of other digital public infrastructure as well on the architecture side. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us here. And Sujith Nair is co-founder of FIDE, the Foundation for Interoperability in Digital Economy. Thanks very much, all of you, for being with us. Mr. Koshy, Mr. Nilikan, he said I should ask you all the questions, so I'm going to start right there. Where are we at in terms of transactions on ONDC? And are you happy with the pace? I mean, the direction is set, it's clear, but are you happy with the pace of adoption and what you're seeing on the network?
Thank you. Thanks for this, dialogue. And this is an opportunity for us to give the founders a confidence that things are shaping up. So instead of simply giving some numbers in absolute sense has no meaning, especially in a country with 1.5 billion population. So I'll just tell you how the things are growing and what's the kind of traction I see. A lot of numbers comes out only when the number, it just happened. But a lot of things happen in pipeline. So let me just take a couple of minutes to just put the things in context for you. See, if you look at ONDC, as you all, it's a network. If you realize the first such experiment ever done, and what is one of the key part of this idea is that normally think somebody setting up a platform or somebody setting up a stock exchange, somebody setting up a bank. They have all smart people, all codes of student varieties sitting together, designing, programming a system, and then get the FM to press a button and you advertise and get everybody to do. So there's a huge amount of initial part under the party's control to demonstrate that it works. But in network, there's nothing like that. As my favorite say, I'm just a conductor or a choreographer. And the network will succeed only when there are the cello players, the violin players, the guitar players, all of them have to come together. And it's a question of, and they have to sing in harmony. So the code sheet has to say.
Can you hear the music, sir?
Yes. No, so let's not be impatient. So if you look at, that's what we started with. So we want to show it works. We started last year. End of February, we got some early adopters. They said, oh, okay, I can come and try it out and it works. So he said, okay, get some merchants in 5 cities. India, for a large country, it has to work. We had 4 buyer platform, one buyer platform, 4 seller platform, and logistic platform. On the first day, it took the whole day for everybody to get one transaction up, which happened in Bangalore. Okay. And it was to demonstrate, it has to show. So in the next few months, we were what we call the alpha testing. We had few merchants in every cities and say whether it works for different kinds of people. And we took the most difficult part, which is grocery and food. Because if you look at this, the expectations that grocery is all about small shops, food is all about quick delivery. In fact, when I said we were going to do food, a lot of people said you're dead. But so we got, and in all the places, there's no point in telling everybody there's a network because it will leave the customer a bad experience. They're not merchant debt. So in the last calendar year, we're working on that. In January this year, we said, hey, we can't be just doing some 80 cities, some 5 merchants each or whatever it is. Let's try to do something more. So then in Bangalore, we started saying that, hey, we are there, why don't you try it out? To give the confidence. So if I just give you some big numbers and what we are doing, because numbers is what excites you. So, and what's happening? If you look at in January, we had about 800 merchants, some about 10, 12 network participants, doing about 50 transactions per people trying here and there. So today, and then we started with grocery and food, then we added mobility. And in the last few weeks and couple of months, we have practically started all beauty, fashion, all of them. Different things picked up in different speed. If you look at the one that picked up speed the most was mobility. Today, while you all know the numbers in Bangalore, and there are pilots happening in multiple places, about 3-4 of them. Altogether, they did a peak of 100,000, that is a lakh transaction in a day. So second thing, what was really scaring me was food that picked up the second. And grocery is picking up and all of them else. So if I tell you from 800 merchants, if I look at everybody as merchants and service provider, is about 1.5 lakh. Out of which about 80,000, about 90,000 is taxi drivers and auto drivers, a little less. So the rest are primarily, major, 70% is what you call the food guys, then grocery, and about 1,500 others. So look at the way, and peak transactions in the non-mobility one happened about 35,000, on average about 20,000 transactions a day, 20,000 transactions a day. And I can see that interesting stuff is, it is giving confidence to a variety of people. First is the confidence to somebody who puts in money. I think when somebody starts putting in money, it's a humongous endorsement, not just themselves, and calling everybody, okay, come, let's put money. I mean, this is one. If you remember, you saw the Google announcement. They say that they are also coming out with a lot of solutions and stuff. I'm just talking about the big ones. And many of the large players like HULs and ITs of the world, they came and made themselves, figured it out. But in the book, when I say 80,000, there are only one merchant. But they all realize that this is kind of like Nandan was saying earlier, there's a humongous potential to liberate the traditional commerce and their entrepreneur spirit of the small entrepreneurs, whether it is in running a kirana or running a local courier stuff. Because if you look at, that was one of the things that has happened around the world. One of the biggest challenge of the concentrated, the very tech-oriented, concentrated one was market concentration and practices that is not at the best of the interest of the small players. But now this kind of confidence is helping. So if I have few thousands of large and small enterprises who are on various stages of integration, and you see in the next coming months, they think. So if you want, again, I'll just stop with one more number. I say that, what am I trying to work towards? By end of the year, I want to say non-mobility 100,000.
So mobility 1 lakh, and non-mobility everything else 1 lakh.
That's what I'm trying in the next few months.
Okay, you're almost there.
But I need I'm saying is, that's what I'm trying. I'm not, see, for example, non-mobility, I'm not there, no?
Okay.
I told you, my peak was 35,000, 30,000.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
It'll happen the next few months. That's what I want to achieve. I'm trying to, see, I'm putting myself in a difficult position, I know, but I think that's the only way we can all work towards. Take
Absolutely.
difficult targets.
Absolutely, sir. Dr. Varma, you are the chief architect of the entire protocol. Is the protocol all set, or is that also that also undergoes changes? Because as you see, it functioning in the marketplace, you learn more about it, problems you face. Talk to us a little bit about that, and where can this protocol really take us in terms of the vision, which I put to Mr. Nilikani as well. Go on, sir.
Yeah, I think first of all, thank you so much for putting this together. It's fantastic to see. No network exists without the entrepreneurs. I think network is as useless as it is, unless the edges, our innovators are on the edges. So thank you so much for doing what you're doing. Why some of us are even more bullish than he is, because he has to commit number, is because
feel free to put out your own numbers.
Yeah. So I think I look at it. This is as big as the internet. I mean, this is difficult to comprehend. People can comprehend linearity. They can't comprehend nonlinear, exponential. It's very, very difficult to get exponential. This is why we always underestimate. Okay? And it is important to understand that nonlinearity is going to kick in. And when that kick in, you will see exponential growth in places that we wouldn't even expect. UPI, the same reason. We were less than 50 million people doing payments in 2016. Today we have, between UPI and Aadhaar enabled payment, we have 500 million people. That's 10x growth in 6 years, which is impossible to imagine that it wouldn't happen. No VC can predict, no entrepreneur can predict, because the network growth is, as Sir Tim Berners-Lee said once, famously said, either internet will be used by everyone or it will be used by no one. I think ONDC is going to see the similar behavior, that we are going to get everyone in there. So we are not going to see the numbers that we can't fathom. That I'm telling you, we can't fathom this number. That's point number one. And point number two, on your question of maturity, the protocol work didn't start yesterday. and you know, we co-founded FIDE few years back, but the idea, I come from supply chain background myself, and it's been brewing in our head that the transaction web is here to come. And we are going to get to this transaction web, from a content web to transaction web very quickly. And when we come, we have to think about protocols. There's no other way. Universality can come. So it's been brewing in our head for a while. Definitely in my head, it's been happening. And when we started our work, we started actually crafting. Ravi is here as our principal architect. But we have a large community. We have a large community who is, you know, surprisingly and, you know, wonderful, very energized community that is actually pushing the protocol boundaries. The protocol itself is designed as 2 layers. There is a core layer of the protocol, which is very stable, and it's a 1.0 version, and it's very quite stable. And then there is a sectoral layer 2, specific to sector taxonomies, that is actually coming up, where you will see commerce, mobility, and now education, skilling, and some of these are actually much more mature, because they are actually, that's where it's getting launched. Whereas energy interface are in the works. So you would see things like 0.7 version or 0.5 version of that. And we are deeply creating, communities are reviewing closely. I sort of act as the dictator, looking at all this stuff. But it's wonderful to see this layer 2 evolving very differently. So we will see things like agri, health, agri is global, by the way, and health coming in, education, skilling we covered, energy, climate, that's going to happen, circular economy Nandan talked about. What are the manufacturing? That's very, very interesting, supply chain unbundling in the manufacturing. This goes back to, I think, a larger point Nandan was making. That is an important pattern to understand, and I'll stop there. We naturally centralized things because the edges were not digital. Edges were actually physical. And that's where we had everyone in the physical realm, and then you created a massive, pooled, large company, large setup, large compute power. Everything was accumulated in a centralized architecture. That's giving away to actually everyone being a compute device. Literally, every machine, every car, every device there, and every human being is going to be a compute, moving compute. And the compute, and that's why Tesla is going to have the largest cloud, they say. You know, it's a GPU cloud. Because it's cars with GPUs. It's very powerful reimagination of how a decentralized resource pool can be actually unified, not centralized, unified through a protocol. And that's what HTTP did, in the internet did, with content. Why can't we do that? It's a very powerful reimagination of it. I encourage you to be bullish about it, because we have good VCs supporting you. So go after it. Okay, it's a very, very different way of reimagining. And this perfectly works for country. And country is giving you a platform like ONDC that is actually giving you the trigger or the impetus for you to grow.
I completely take your point, and I think the room is completely fully bullish about ONDC. I don't think anyone here is not. But just to what I asked Mr. Koshy as well, you said, well, the human mind cannot take in exponential numbers, right? I mean, small numbers, big numbers, they're kind of hard to process. When will the takeoff happen, according to you? I mean, and what will be the trigger? Do we need a trigger, or it'll just be snowball?
For commerce, I don't think we need transactions. I don't think we need a trigger. We have an extremely starved, fragmented industry. Much of our industries are starved, disconnected, fragmented. Businesses, this is why they exist. They exist to transact. Why do I need an identity if I can't use the identity? Why do I need a bank account if I can't use the bank account? Why do I need capital? Access to capital if I can't deploy that capital to improve the economic value on top of that. So everything comes to transaction, and we are starved. Very, very, very large segment is very starved. So I don't think we need a forceful demo moment for you.
For commerce.
Commerce,
you
I
think?
don't think we need anything like that. But I would still argue that a vehicle like ONDC, a policy, supporting policy, for example, our GST, we might create enough confusion to ourselves, saying how is GST going to work on ONDC? Where does tax get collected? If it decentralized happen, where? I think we will need to go through, and I think he is doing a lot of that heavy lifting, in one sense, to create a larger policy unblocking. Plus, so if you create narrative and messaging, awareness, you asked that question, do we need large awareness? Yeah, I think that will happen. We'll have policy unblocking to happen, but I think the industry is absolutely ready for this. You'll be amazed. This is why Namayatri is seeing this. Drivers were signing up. Nobody needed to tell them. They knew it. They inherently understand what it means.
No, absolutely, and I'm looking forward to it, for that takeoff, for that non-linear growth. Sujith, your own thoughts on what's been said so far. One of the things which he said was, he mentioned so many industries, right? And you sort of prompted manufacturing is also an industry. One difference that I can see between Aadhaar and this, for example, Aadhaar was a project of, it did something which did not exist before, which is giving everyone an identity, a digital identity, right? Here, transactions are happening, commerce is going on, and this is kind of introducing, and the appeal seems to be to do it more efficiently, right? That seems to be the appeal. And it also, in a way, kind of does seem like a bit of a disruption, and people generally are very apprehensive and reluctant to, when they see something, their way of doing business getting disrupted. So just wanted your thoughts there.
No, thanks. Firstly, thank you for having me here. It's a fantastic session. Am I audible enough? Okay, great. Yeah, I think on that point, Prashant, I think people call it disruption, but I call it's unconventional, but totally old school, because we're just going back to the design of internet. The fundamental principles of backend, and I'm a big, eternal, passionate student about internet. The more I work with Pramod, I realize that there's something that I didn't learn in college well, that I'm learning now. But I think the idea is that, you don't have to really go through this sort of a very heavy bureaucratic approach of aggregation, then to create value. You can create value with the resource which is available there, and you don't have to bring it together, which is what internet taught us. The whole thing from packet switching, asynchronous communication, didn't really put anybody in the center. That's why we call it a network of networks. If that can happen for internet, if that can happen for emails, if that can happen for even our mobile telephony systems, why can't commerce happen that way? And there is this model that's been in place where you talk about, this monolithic model. Fundamentally, it created a systemic risk in design. I mean, probably it's more obvious now than then, where you have to have both buyer and seller on the same platform. It's called the double coincidence of presence. Now, when you try to create it, it's creating a lot of friction and cost to bring them there. And then, of course, you have somebody aggregating that in the middle to have an incentive aligned to those of the other two. Why do it in the first place? Why, if internet was never done that way, why did we switch to commerce? That's a different reason, different discussion. Maybe, yes, talent density, capital, all came in to create the likes of Amazon and Uber. But fundamentally, if you were to take an approach of what could be the most minimal footprint of a technology that emits power that does not extract power. Okay, classic case of internet, the protocol showed us that. UPI is showing that. The protocol itself does not have a value. It's like 0, which amplifies your ones to tens and hundreds. But that design, it's not very unconventional. It's not a disruption. But yes, today when you talk about doing that in 2023, you have that burden of legacy, which is why probably in my view, you see that sort of a change going through a cold start problem, because there is a whole lot of consumer behavior model that got into this, wherein it's convenient to have somebody's neck to catch in the middle if my phone doesn't show up when I order for one, right? And it also kind of exploited the user's ability to fall for something like price, then choices, then assortment. So it all created this sort of an instant gratification model of getting users somehow. But I don't think we went that far. The numbers are there for everybody to see since the beginning of this event. So how do we therefore not, how do we switch away from that model? And how do we know that, yeah, with this multi-platform hop of a transaction that Nandan spoke about, can we still deliver that value? Now, with ONDC, the definition of value itself is changing. Probably the value creation will happen in a very different vector, different way of growth, where it could be completely combinatorial. You know, the example that I keep taking about, I'm looking for a day when if I'm going to the airport, if the same buyer app is getting me a taxi, it should also help me get me a coffee, and the delivery address for that coffee is a moving car from another platform. And that's possible. I mean, it kind of creates a whole new vistas for problem solvers, builders out here in the crowd to think about the possibilities which probably did not was available with this model. So that shift will take some time. It will create one good story to get going. And to talk about non-linear, I mean, it's just fascinating how I got a phone call in May last year saying, I mean, it was Kannada, and I tried to understand a bit of that Kannada myself. They're saying, Beckham protocol, Gottu, you want to get started. And this was an auto rickshaw driver calling me, and we had this coffee conversation. And for me, that was like I mean, the penny drop moment for me. It's like, you know, if they can understand fundamentally, because they've been through this system, and this is what, to Koshy's point about small entrepreneurs get it. They have the hustle built in. It's a default for them. So for them to think and imagine and build from there was a fascinating story. So the first million definitely took some time. I know we have Maggie, Vimal, everybody here, the real pioneers of Namayatri. Started about, probably took 6 months. But the last 6 million happened in 13 days. And this is happening because the drivers fundamentally believe that this is a platform where their agency is restored, where they have a choice to be and participate and you know, discover demand at their own command. And if that can happen for auto rickshaw, yes, it will be glacial in terms of speed in some of the other sectors. Yeah, even I'm surprised that restaurants kind of are taking off better, but it will be very fast in others.
Did you guys imagine mobility will take off like this?
See, if you really ask me, that was the first thing to have started. So it had the longest time period.
Okay.
But at the speed at which, to be very honest, it took me even my surprise, the speed at which happened. But I'll just add one more dimension. Sure. Eventually, what we expect, it's a matter of a couple of years from now, every product or service which is catalogable, that means it is relevant for a broad cross-section of consumers, will be present in the network using this protocol. Different kinds of buying applications will come and help their buyers to buy what is relevant. So it could be B2B, it could be B2C, it could be products, it could be services, it could be finance, it could be credit, everything can come. In a strict sense, it will truly mimic the physical market. Tell me any other business other than this e-commerce where things are not unbundled. Maruti doesn't make their tire. It beautifully gets stitched. You don't have a problem, because they don't make the tire, you don't have a problem riding, because the standards and protocols stitch together. If you again, I often tell my friends, I think, few years ago, and still it is there, multi-billion-dollar business was catalog marketing. Completely unbundled. Those days, it was the most inefficient. You had to get a physical catalog by post. Today, I'm getting digital catalog. That's all that is there. It is finally unbundled. So now when it came to, like Pramod was saying, we unnecessarily create an artificial barrier for whatever reason. But in the digital world, the technology has grown, protocol has matured, that it can come back to the common way in which human beings have transacted all through the world by innovation and specialization.
So since e-commerce is by far the biggest category in that sense, among the various categories that ONDC will offer, e-commerce is a huge commerce is a huge category, right? Without the existing large platforms allowing their sellers, I don't know if that's the right word, allowing their sellers to be on the network, will it take much longer? How do you think about that?
The way I look at this like this, you heard the numbers. What percentage of people are there? See, because we are the kind of people, we are the elite of India. We think that the world begins and ends with us. If you look at the product range of all these platforms, 90% of the goods are people meant for us. And that's a very small segment of products being produced. Where is the market of you will see there are so many in Tier 1 and Tier 2, but they're again the elite of the Tier 1, 2. When we have one other network participant called AirPay, he's just gone live. He said, my strategy is to build up rural demand. I'm not even bothered, I'm not even trying to do any bad. So I will create rural demand, I'll even give assisted commerce for the people who do not have, like the old PCOs of the time. There are a couple of people who's doing. So we are going to see innovations in different segments. And that is what is going to drive. And then take another point. You think like a seller. Assuming that you are, let's say you are a restaurant owner, a seller, you're currently in Swiggy or in Amazon. As you see the fintechs of the world and telcos of the world coming together and building 1 billion people in a common pool, and you are a seller, and let's say you are in, like I said, Swiggy said, hey, if these people are not part of the network, I am going to lose out. Either he will convince the Amazons of the world to join, or he will say that I'm going to join there too, or I'm going to leave you and join if I'm better. So the market compulsion, please understand, like Nandan said some time ago, we cannot stop an idea whose time has come. And this is an idea whose time has come. Because except for few people who have established huge interest in this one, 99% of the buyers and sellers, or rather if you take the sellers, has an incentive to be a part of an open network. Because it is giving them opportunity. So that's why I believe strongly, when there is an idea where the architecture is right, and it is beneficial for the majority, you can't stop it. The beauty of this is beneficial for the majority.
Would you want to sort of add to that? That's the most common sort of thing which gets, how will this evolve given the resistance from the existing large platforms? Although we had that number, right, only 4-5% of e-com gets done. It's very small. So there's the rest of the 95%. But then one could wonder and ask the question, why isn't the rest of the 95% already on these platforms? So is that a segment that you can go after and get on the platform? Is there a reason they were not on the platform so far? And what will you need to do to be able to get the rest of the 95% of the platform? Just your thoughts.
No, I think if a single player is trying to do everything, it's very limiting, extremely limiting. And there's only so much you can grow in a country of 1 billion people. So I think what a network does is it creates, it allows many people to acquire 100,000 or 50,000 merchants onto the into the network, connect to the grid, as Nandan said. But if everybody does go and acquire few merchants, collectively you have a universal discoverability and fulfillment capability through the network. So what we could not do before is that because we are expecting one company to actually go around all of India, get all of that merchants digitized, added, brought onto a platform. So in the single platform model, it is a natural limitation, which is why internet is not a single platform. You know, it's nothing at human scale is actually a single platform story, frankly. It's always a network story. I think, so as he's saying, the time has come for us to reimagine, is it a single platform that's going to universalize commerce, or is it a network of platforms that's going to universalize? And our bet is network. Network has always survived much longer. For a network to come, you need interoperability, and that's where Becken was coming through, is to say, we will define the language of communication and let platforms innovate, and platforms might go at language-speaking apps, different apps for self-help groups, for example, women's self-help group. Beautiful stories emerging out of ONDC. I think they're not even telling the stories mostly because we have to put some researchers on them to actually write all these stories. It's just ground up that is actually starting, because all they have to do is to connect to the grid. They don't have to do everything else, right? So that's a very powerful, the unbundled approach is a very powerful way of reimagining what a network can do. So this is very critical way of thinking, okay? Because UPI, this is the same reason you would ask, why did UPI take off from less than 50 million people doing payments? And China was so ahead of us with QR code payments with 2 duopolies that did it. We crossed China plus UK plus US, everything put together. We just shot up. It's because no single player played the game. Many players came, but on a shared playground. So ONDC and Becken and creating is a shared playground, and Antlers of the world are creating the initial entrepreneurial impetus for them to be able to actually do capital and support the 3 C's that they talked about. It's wonderful.
If I can just add to that, I think, since we all have founders here, building stuff and imagining ideas, I think we have a mental model of how a platform will look like for e-commerce, and it's very homogeneous, and it's whether fundamentally if you take an Uber or an Amazon or an Airbnb, there is a certain fundamental common DNA to it. But I think as you hear from Nandan, we have a very diverse population. So it's very important to have applications which are contextually relevant. Today we are contextually agnostic. We treat every customer the same way or every merchant the same way. So we're going from there to contextually aware to contextually relevant. So I can give you examples where, I don't know if, so Raj is here, there is a company which wants to think about seller app fundamentally differently. They are, instead of putting Kirana store on the cloud, they're putting cloud inside Kirana store. All it takes is a $50 Raspberry Pi to get connected to ONDC to sell my 500 top SKU items. Now that solution probably wouldn't have come if there was no grid to connect to, right, fundamentally. The other is AI first. I mean, we are living in the age of AI. There's no going back, I guess. So AI first shopping apprentice who I don't have to give attention to. Somebody who can talk to in my local language and tell me whether inventory, the dal is there or not. So this is going to be an idea that's going to come up very, very fast because it's going to be very easy, less irritating, very, very handy for a shopkeeper who's also running it like a warehouse manager, dealing with the customers and distributors and everything. And then, I mean, I think that whole consumer electronics, we don't talk about it enough. Why can't refrigerators order milk by itself? I mean, because it's fundamentally a protocol. It can be connected to, if you have smart TVs and smart refrigerators. I mean, you see the whole variety that will come in. That diversity is what probably is where the idea density, talent density, Rajiv and Nathan spoke about, that needs to come about to sort of deepen this access, diffuse this capability, which is what internet did, because internet is not just one thing for us. Okay, it's many things. So that's what I see what would happen to sort of expand that to, say, 30% or 40%. But that's the whole acceleration we'll have to do. And this event is particularly important to trigger those ideas.
Prashant, can I add something?
Please.
So I think people should not get stuck only, I think they talked about it early, only on commerce. I think build with backend, build on ONDC is a theme that allows the entrepreneurs to go beyond the traditional commerce. Today, finding a job, finding an internship, many of that is actually broken experience. There is no way you can find, I can't find, most privileged people like us, we can't find an internship for my daughter, right? You ask around, some opportunity. Why is it? Because it's very fragmented and very disconnected ecosystems that are working. So there is tremendous possibility of bringing, without centralization, bringing a unification and an internet-like effect. So go beyond commerce into areas. Nandan gave enough of, items to think about to bring that. And second point, and famously one politician said that, nobody's going to know poor people won't bank, they won't know what to do. How can they do payments? And UPI, you see today QR code is stuck in a coconut seller or the bull with the, where you pay money, right? The donation money, the hundi, yeah. You stick a QR code and a hundi onto gods. In Mumbai next month, you will see QR code on every Ganesh shop, right? So this is because no one company had to do this. We simply allowed an open ecosystem to do one thing for yourself and connect to a UPI grid. That is why that exponential, which is very hard to imagine, very hard to break through your mental models. But when that happens, we'll be sitting here 5 years from then. Many of these guys would have cracked many of these puzzles of one thing they can do and connect to the grid and creating that effect.
And I'd love to be here back maybe a year, 2 years, 5 years down the line and say, well, I was
5 years
here.
maybe
I
late.
was 5 years maybe. No, I mean, absolutely. It's fascinating to hear from all of you. The enthusiasm is infectious. And I think I completely agree that I think, we are limited by our own imagination. But you guys have imagined this before. You guys have done this before. Be it Aadhaar, be it UPI, and that has happened, that's scaled. So I don't think there's any reason to be, less optimistic even as we track the journey of ONDC over the next many years. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being here. Appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.